Hello everybody, welcome to the next edition of the Tom and JT podcast.
It's been a while.
It certainly has been a while. We've been locked down far too long, but we're ready to go again. This week's session we're going to talk about recovering from injury and how winning strength can help with that. And we're going to use myself, JT, as an example, having had a little bit of an injury 6 months ago, where just a small one, where my kneecap decided to split in two and is now full of metalwork and basically starting from the beginning again.
Yeah.
The sort of approach that I've used is a three-phase approach, which is firstly get through the recovery, then go into rehab, and then finally into a rebuild phase. So Tom, anything you want to add before we start?
No, I'm excited to talk about injuries because I've got, it's not opinions, but it's just thoughts. I've got a good friend and colleague, Dr. Peter Lundgren, and I bounce ideas off him, and what I've come to realise is injuries is just the first stage of strength, and being that I'm pretty good at strength these days, injuries are quite easy to overcome, and there's an easy analysis onto why things happen as well. But I'm interested to talk about it at least.
Excellent. Okay. Well, if I start, I'll explain the injury in a little more detail so you've got some context as to where we're coming from. I was racing 400 metres in the British Masters Championships up in Derby, August the 21st, remember it clear as a bell. I was straining for the line, straining to get first place, although to be honest I'd have probably got second, and with about 10 metres to go my kneecap tore in two, the patella split, patella tendon taking the bottom half of the knee down and the rest of the knee disappearing halfway up my leg. I went down like a sack of spuds, spent the next 3 hours on a stretcher next to the track before being taken to A&E. Managed to get driven by my wonderful partner back to Southampton that night, and they were able to operate a couple of days later. The operation pinned the kneecap back together and added a supportive band of metal to help protect the patella tendon. Basically my leg was then locked straight for a good month or so. A lot of people were saying to me, you're going to start rehab, when are you going to start rehab? And at that point I made the mental decision that I wasn't in rehab, I was in recovery, which was actually quite a good move because unbeknown to me at the time I had some blood clots going around my lungs and things got pretty scary, and I was able to go through that phase without worrying about rebuilding my knee or anything like that, but just getting the body right. At that time I was still a member of Winning Strength and had regular calls with Tom, and I think even though there was no physical exercise he could give, there was a lot of mental support that really helped. And he also put me on to red light therapy, so I bought myself my own red light therapy so that I could do this sort of stuff at home. So, anything you'd like to cover on that?
I think there's a couple of things that come to mind, because going into this, obviously you want to win, you're competitive, and then we're already talking about next season and the season after and what are you doing in these different Masters categories. But you made your mind up, you decided fairly quickly that I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
That you were like, I'm moving on to the next goal, like I've done this, I've got, what were the words, I've had a great ride, or I had a great run at it. Yeah. Whatever you did, like you managed to get world records or just world championships?
World championships.
World championships, you've done it. And you're happy with that. And now it's like, well, actually, being able to mentally go, right, from the get-go, I'm not in a rush to rehab, which is that initial thought. It's like, how quick can I get back on the track normally?
Mm-hmm.
How quick can I get back in the weight room? How quick can I get under the bar? That would be my initial thought if I've still got a goal. So the fact that you're able to switch your mindset with, you know what, I've had a good run at it, I'm now going to make sure everything goes into my coaching, which then gives you that time, and it probably played into your hands a little bit more. But the mental aspect is the toughest. We spoke about it recently on the gym floor yesterday with regards to if you can't do leg work, you've got to focus your energies elsewhere. You're still going to have that competitive element, either whether it's with yourself or against others. I like my clients to go, right, you can't squat. We're not going to set squat goals. There's no point. We just want to be able to make sure you can get out of bed, tie your shoelaces, get to that kind of small goal. But being able to go, actually, my body's fine. I can lie on a bench. I can pull myself up with some rope. I can get down and get back up. So I think it's important to take care of that competitive element, take care of some goal setting with other movements or other ventures, like with the coaching. You're able to go, okay, well, I'm not running competitively anymore, but my athletes will be what I'm going to focus on.
Yeah, that's very key. I'd forgotten about that actually I made the decision not to run again on the morning after the operation, admittedly waking up still under the effects of morphine. But I decided I was going to be the one that says stop running, not the surgeon. He did then come in and say you're not going to run again, but I felt the decision was in my hands, which was a nice way of approaching it. So the recovery probably took a month or so before I was mentally and physically able to do much more. I think it was probably at the 6-week stage that I engaged the physio for the first time. And I remember turning up, hobbling into his studio with 2 sticks and him taking a look at the leg. The leg was had a support on it that had the ability to bend if the settings were right. And I knew that the physio was going to change this from a straight leg to a 20-degree bend. And quite honestly, I was terrified at the prospect of having had a leg straight for 6 weeks, now suddenly being able to bend it and having no idea what that would do. The biggest thing was that the physio gave me permission to walk with 1 stick instead of 2. He looked at me and said, well, why are you even bothering using 2? And it was a case of throwing it away and moving on to the next step. And that was a big psychological breakthrough for me. The leg went to 20 degrees and I was able to start doing some very simple rehab exercises. Once we got the leg to, I think, about 40 degrees of flexion, that was probably the first time I came in to the gym again to see everybody.
Yeah, it was a nice surprise. See you come up the stairs.
I think I'd come straight from the physio, and it was just coming down to the gym was a breakthrough. I don't think I picked up any weights, but it was just nice to come and think that the routine was starting. We had our first discussion about what sort of things I could do, and that was the start of the next rehab phase. Now the exercises I was doing, I didn't think it at the time, but looking back on them, they were very simple movements. They were about educating the leg again. The beauty there was I was able to come down the gym and do the rehab using the kit in the gym, and it felt like I was allocating time properly to do them, not just squeezing them in at the odd moment during the day. So coming down here and using the steps. And
you basically took your physio routine and brought it here.
Yes.
Could we have done other stuff? Yeah. You weren't in a rush. We didn't have a time scale, and it was just a case of take the movements that the physio had given you, do them here. Then you could have trained some upper body as well, I think we did. But it just gave you that normality of routine back. It was I'm back to the gym.
Yeah.
I think you took, it was a couple of months on the bus.
Yes, it was something like that.
A couple of months on the bus just to keep his gym routine going.
Yeah.
And then you got back in the car soon after that.
Yeah.
But I thought that was important. It boosts morale, isn't it? I mean, you just done COVID with 2 years at home, and then you're told there's no more weightlifting. I mean, even though you have stuff in your garage, it's not the same.
No.
It's not the same being around those like-minded people, and then everybody watching you as well. It is quite cool to watch, because there's nothing more inspiring in my gym than anybody just working hard.
Yeah.
Whether it's knee rehab and you can see, boom, there's a breakthrough, which is always cool, to world record log lifts or whatever's going on.
Yeah.
But I think it helped you get back in that routine, and I think that sped things up from a mental point of view, or a psychological point of view.
And there's only so many times you can watch the Marvel back catalogue at home.
Yeah.
So the sort of latter stages of the rehab, as the knee got slightly stronger and slightly more mobile, and mobility was probably the most important thing, was I bought myself Concept 2 ski erg, so I was able to do upper body cardio work without bending the knee at all. That again psychologically kept me engaged.
Because not many people are going to know how often you're active, or at least before. Like, you do something every morning with your brother?
I would say, well, I train with my brother over FaceTime 5 days a week. He sits on his rower or on his bike, I sit on my watt bike or my ski erg, and we train together for between 30 and 60 minutes a day, have a chat and catch up on things. But yes,
and then weights on top, like before the injury, weights on top of that was another 2 to 3.
It was another 3 days a week, and then if I was running, I was on the track 3 days a week as well. So
it's finding the ability to replace it with the ski erg was a big one. It was a big win. When you were, I think you got to 20 or 30 degrees and you were able to use that.
Yeah, it's that. There's always something you can do, and finding something to do to keep that going.
But sorry to interject, but that's the mentality that got you World Championships. But people don't take the same mentality and apply it to rehab, apply it to their GPP, apply it to. Not many people apply it to their training non-stop. So that mentality is what's going to help people either recruit their full range again, because you see so many people, the doctor will tell them, you'll get full range in your knee, and then they don't, because they don't use it, you lose it. So that mentality is key in attacking something like this. And it's interesting you said re-educating movements, because you had to. It was like those neural connections to that movement, to knee flexion and extension, weren't there. So you had to essentially relearn to walk.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, to think about it, something you've been doing for your whole life.
That's yes.
To a high level.
Yeah.
And you had to kind of relearn. I can't even step off a box here.
No.
Or a step up, like the wedge step up, just terminal knee extension. I can't. Sitting down. There was a shift. There's all these things going on. You had to reteach. You had to provide the body with those neural connections again, and that's what rehab is. It's not rocket science. It's just a little bit of relearning, which is going to create strength. People forget strength comes from the signalling from your nervous system down to the muscle. Muscle had atrophied, and you had no connections because everything had to come apart and then be reconnected again. So there's a whole set of new connections you had to make.
And that was something quite key, because I was saying to you, it looks like my complete thigh has wasted away, and you were saying it hasn't wasted away, it just hasn't been used. You just need to refire it again.
So the science behind it is at a myonuclei level. If we go all the way to the nucleus of the muscle, that muscle cell is still there, it's just shrunk. It takes, I think it's like the research is incomplete from what I gather. I think it takes between 15 to 20 years for that to actually change. So everyone talks about mind muscle memory. Like, you go away from the gym, you come back, then you inflate again, you blow up again, you're back to your normal size, because the muscle cell is still there. It just hasn't been inflated. So what I said to you was, it's all there. You just, unfortunately, you had however many months of not using it because you weren't allowed to do any knee flexion extension. You only had certain degrees, and then it slowly got bigger and bigger. So it takes a lot longer to lose all that. So all you had to do was retrain the connections. Once you have full control of the movement, once you can do full squats, come back up, it will be so easy for you to gain your muscle mass back, at which point you'd be at your former strength level quite quickly.
Yeah. I think within that, sort of setting small goals, however small they are, and achieving them and celebrating was quite a key. There are probably two main ones that I remember. The first one was being able to walk without sticks, and that was almost like how a child learns to walk, where they're climbing around the furniture and then suddenly they realise they're standing on their own. My case was I was hanging out the washing, and I realised I was moving from one end of the washing line to the other.
You had noticed
without my sticks. And so at that point, I did actually video it. I took the video into the lounge, and I walked towards it, and it looks something like Terminator waking up. And but I'd made my first tentative steps without sticks, and again that was another big celebration for me. The second one was because cycling is going to play such an important part in what sport I do from now on, was being able to get a pedal stroke around, because the flexibility in the knee was so poor I couldn't get the leg all the way round. Now you have the elliptical trainer in the gym,
Ecobike, yeah.
which is slightly different to a cycle in that it's a little more forgiving on the cycle, and I would sit on that every day, come in, give it a try, how far can I get, I'd shout over to Tom, look, I can move it 1 degree more today, and then finally there was that day where I did a complete cycle. And again, I think I videoed myself, or you videoed me doing about 10 pedal strokes, and that was just such an important milestone for me. I didn't actually get to the point where I could ride an indoor bike until about Christmas, but once you've got to that point, then cycling has been very easy. So I've been able to cycle for the last 3 months indoors. Not brave enough to go outdoors yet, because it's your feet are clipped in and I'm not sure how quickly I can get out.
Yeah.
But certainly those were big milestones, and for me massive achievements, even though they seem very simple things on the face.
You've got to have your small wins, otherwise you're going to drive yourself crazy, because it's like me starting out in strongman and going, I'm going to break the log world record. It's miles off.
Mm-hmm.
I had to learn proper technique, hit deadlift. It was. I think it was the world record under 90 when I first started strongman. It was probably near my squat.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm expected to you've got to have these small wins that keeps you on track, keeps you motivated, and some of the small wins you stumbled upon.
Yeah.
You definitely wanted to get on a bike. You knew that, as you just said, you knew that was going to be a part of your life moving forward with regards to what you can do with your brother, what you might be able to do competitively. But I don't think you wrote down that specific goal. It just happened to be, you just happened to look at the bike and think, I'm going to get on that.
Yeah.
And sometimes things will just crop up. Mm-hmm. It was just different movements. Now it's obviously, or it was at one point, learning how to step down off a box without any different movement patterns occurring, any compensations, like doing it smoothly.
That was a hugely frustrating one, because everybody knows how to come downstairs, and to have to retrain to do that. And again, that was a case of every day in the gym I had the steps there, stepping off them, stepping back on, stepping off, until it started to feel normal. It does now. I can go down the stairs even in the morning, alternate steps, but in those early days, coming off a 2-3 inch platform and not being able to do it is incredibly frustrating.
How was your energy post training when you were doing those ones, when you were having to relearn the movement patterns?
It was neurally very, very tough. Yeah, I'm lucky in that I'm in theory retired, and I do factor in rest periods after my sessions.
Are you talking naps?
Not necessarily naps.
Because I love a good nap, JT. We can talk about naps.
Yeah, so I don't tend to nap, but I will sit down and watch some telly or read a book or something like that, but actually make sure that the body is
I can imagine you got home and you were like, what?
Yes.
What just happened?
Yeah.
I used to be able to run, deadlift, jump, do
I've
the lot.
done next to nothing. It's on the other hand, what has been pleasing, I haven't been necessarily frustrated by my training. As an example, the Watt bike, I have a Watt bike at home that I use extensively, and the Watt bike has a thing called FTP, functional threshold power, which drives the level that you train at. And periodically you're supposed to do a test, and that resets everything for you. So I'd done a test probably 8 months ago. I had a figure for my wattage that I need to work at. I thought I need to redo that again, and so about a few weeks ago I redid that test. In my mind I was going to achieve at least the same, if not better, than I'd done six to 8 months ago.
Yeah.
It was only 5 seconds before I actually failed during the test that there was any conception that I might not make it. And so I've been pleased that, again, mentally I'm not thinking you're a failure, you're off the pace, you're unfit. I am what I am, and I've been able to accept that, and then each incremental improvement I can then celebrate.
I would say that's just the winning mindset, to take my company name, because I've struggled with that.
Mm-hmm.
I've struggled with expectations and where should I be and why haven't you done this, and there's a myriad of factors, but the key variable would be, it is what it is, this is where I'm at, what do I do to get to the next step? The whole panic, worrying, anger, frustration, any of those emotions that I would call negative emotions, negative vibes, I would say don't serve you. The quicker you can let go and move on and crack on, the better. And that's something I've had with training, for sure. You've had sessions, you just completely throw all your toys out, you get angry, and then you can have that. I would be in that stupor for a week, 2 weeks, until the next opportunity to lift that thing came around. And it's utterly pointless. The athletes that I see with the strongest mindset and the ones that progress quickly are the ones that can be like, okay, is what it is. What do I need to do? What went wrong? What can I analyse calmly with no attachment to what's happening? And I think that's a big part of winning mindset, a big part of goal setting. Mm-hmm. It's not a case of you're allowing it to get the better of you. It's a case of what's next. It is what it is. You can't do anything. That result's already happened. Spending any negative energy on it is actually going to cause a cortisol spike, which is going to affect your recovery. There's loads of different things, but that's something I've had to get to grips with, and I think that's not just for rehab. That would be an important part of anybody's mindset.
One of my favourite words in coaching is context. Do everything, measure everything within the context of where you are. If you've only got one leg, then you're only going to break the world one-legged record for whatever it is, but do it within that context. Don't beat yourself up because you're not beating the two-legged record for whatever.
I've had that with a client recently, powerlifting. And he's like, well, I should be hitting this, and I'm like, those are your PBs, yeah. Well, what weight did you hit them at? 115 to 120. What are you now? 100. Mm-hmm. You can't compare 120 kilo you to 100 kilo you. No. It's not a fair comp. That's why we have weight categories. Yeah.
The
and you're actually not that far off, and you're about to go to a competition again this year and beat your total by 50, 60 kilos, which is phenomenal. Yeah. Maybe even more. So, as you say, context.
I think we work in environments where there are supposedly well measured absolutes. So yours is around weight and strength. Mine on the track is around time, and people tend to view those as absolutes without looking at context. And so running 100 metres into a 7 mile an hour wind is going to be very different to running with a legal wind behind you.
It's why they have the wind measurements. Absolutely. It's why they have certain altitude regulations as well nowadays.
I'm not sure if they ever brought it in, but it certainly makes a difference.
Because there's still some jumps that are, in fact, the two jumps.
Bob Beeman
and Sotomayor. Yeah. The only one that isn't is Edwards in Gothenburg. Yeah. 93? Yeah, about that. So
it's context is very important, and I think whether you're injured or even in normal training, always consider that context. I think we've sort of covered the recovery and rehab. The rebuild has been again that next step. That the day my physio said pretty much there's no more I can do for you, I'd reached 120 degrees flexion on the knee, which is probably the best I'm going to get, because that's now restricted by the physical metal rather than my mind to get it moved anymore. Yeah. And so we've gone into this rebuild phase, and that is largely gym driven. You've put the program together for me. I do 2 upper body and 1 lower body session a week. Do you want to share your thoughts?
So the upper body is a completely separate way of thinking, because your upper body's fun. So JT needed a side goal. So his goal was, well, I haven't benched 100 kilos. That's a nice number. That was the goal? 100?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is for now.
Yeah, but till you hit it, then it's 120. It always goes up. So you have 2 blues and you want to hit 2 reds. And you're at 86, so we're using another way of thinking for that. just to test you, because it's benching twice a week. We've never done that before, so we're doing one that's a little bit lighter, a bit more speed based, and the other one is more neurally based, so we're doing that. But the rehab side of things, or rebuild side of things, you put it, is pretty much all the basic movements we can do with correct technique. So we've gone through different step up progressions. We didn't bring the split squat in immediately, but the split squat's returned. But we've got some restrictions, not due to the knee, that are holding you back on that, like the hip flexors, the rec fem.
Mm-hmm.
And then the posterior chain stuff you've been able to do, bar knee flexion. I don't think we've got on the inverse curl yet.
No.
That would be the next step for that. I think just kneeling down isn't fun for you at the moment, so we haven't put any pressure through the knee like that. But the basic premise was the physio's cleared you. If you can do what I would call just knee extension, like with a slight raise in your heel, which is the end range, and then it's like, how much can we build that range? So we increased the range to a wedge step up, so your feet was on the floor, your heel was raised, and then we raised that further, which we call a Poliquin step up. You're on a slight angle. And then we went to the Peterson, which I know was one of your favourites, because that was fun. Because the difference between the wedge and the Poliquin versus the Peterson is pretty much the same range, pretty much. But with the Peterson, because you have to balance momentarily on the ball of your foot, it brings in an element of stability.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got strength and stability. So that challenged you hugely, to the point where it was like you would break it down, you would do rest pause, and then you would do as many as you can, and you would be like, Tom, I'm fried.
Mm-hmm.
Almost to the point where it's like, you need to go home now.
Yeah.
The rest of the session was like, you're done. That challenged you massively. And then we're into split squat patterns. And the latest step up progression is just a high front step up, where I'm actually allowing use of the back leg, but the focus is more on the eccentric.
Mm-hmm.
Because as soon as you bend that knee and you get down to a certain degree, your knee, your quad muscles or whatever's going on neurally, says nope, and your hips go back, and you load your hips. So we're just retraining the eccentric portion now.
Mm-hmm.
But you've progressed pretty well. It's not been slow by any means, but the fact you're not in a rush always helps the coach.
Yes.
If you were in any more of a rush, the only way we would be able to speed it up would be things like daily microcurrent, every other day needling. There'd be something else we'd have to look at, because your nutrition's good, your lifestyle's good, and your sleep's good, so you're getting enough there. So the only way to speed things up from a neural point of view would be how quickly can we get recovery. Frequency of training could then increase, which would then improve strength.
Mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't change the movements. You would just do the same movements, maybe at a lower volume on a second day.
Yeah. Because that's certainly, and you recognised it, that frustration when I get a new exercise and just the brain not knowing what to do, just not being able to tell the leg move in this direction. And it usually takes me at least 1 week of that exercise to get into it. And then once I'm into it, the body remembers what to do, because they're relatively simple movements, but I've just forgotten how to do them.
They are, because you can do them perfectly on your other leg.
Yes.
Without even blinking.
Yes. And that's sort of 1 week to learn, 1 week to then start doing it, and then by the third week I'm actually able to apply a small load to it. And that's been very pleasing, that progression.
Well, that's it. A lot of it's just your body weight.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't needed much else.
No.
The knee is one of the more simple joints, because it's a hinge joint.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously the elbow is a hinge, but there's a bit more rotation there. It basically does one thing. So it's one of the easier ones to figure out, and it is basically step up progression is your key. Obviously sled tracks and other bits and pieces come into it as extra volume.
Yeah.
At the end, a bit more GPP to put your body through. But that
GPP?
General physical preparedness. So it would be like, general movement and then specific. They call it special, but you've got general movements and specific movements.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like the specific movement. The end goal by the end of this program was, can we do some box squats? I think that was one of the goals.
Yeah.
Because we can't get full range, so we're not going to try the Olympic style, because you're going to end up with angrier knees than you probably want. So we're going to load more of a hip dominant, but we'll get your hips below parallel, which will get at least 90 degrees at the knee, and I think that would be a nice little goal for you.
Mm-hmm.
It was by the end of 12 weeks, and we're well on target for that.
Yeah.
But that would be the specific movement, and then all the other ones kind of feed that. So the step up is a general movement because it's not as specific as the squat, and it feeds into it. So I call it just GPP. GPP is a big part of prehab, they call it. So prehabilitation. So people talk about before. It's just one of those modern words that just come out of nowhere. Before you get injured, it's like, oh yeah. That's called training to me.
Absolutely.
But there's a massive element of the better your GPP, the better you are moving forward.
Okay.
As you get stronger, you need a wider base of the pyramid.
Mm-hmm.
You need to be more prepared against injury because you're lifting bigger weights. So you actually need to be doing a lot more assistance than you probably want to be.
Yes, I feel there's been a lot of assistance work in the programme. You touched on the sled work, the variety there as well. I think we started on backward toes, pulls.
Backward drag on the toes, yeah.
And so there the leg is almost straight and the drive is coming from the toes and the lower leg without having to put too much strain on the knee.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've introduced recently more of a sort of walk stroke lunge going forward.
Yeah, the power walk, yeah.
Power walk. We've been doing the sideways movement.
Mm-hmm.
So there's always something different. We've been doing different distances, different weights. So sometimes I'm loading it right up and putting an extra body weight on there. Then sometimes I'm dropping down to 20 kilos but moving fast and with intent, another of our favourite words at the moment.
The sled work is brilliant to add in an option that's not going to make you sore. It doesn't lead to huge amounts of soreness.
Mm-hmm.
It's not incredibly demanding neurally to recover from.
Yeah.
So it's a good way of getting extra work in on the knee joint without, like, if I gave you an extra round of Peterson step ups or 5 extra sets of Peterson step ups, you'd be looking at me swearing.
Yeah.
But if we can do some backward sled work, it's very, very again, if we look at the GPP pyramid, it's further down the pyramid, but it gives an option to then support the Peterson, which will then support the split squat, which will then support the back squat.
As an aside, my friend Tony Mitchell, who's a rehab specialist and was actually there when I did the injury, he provided me with a microscooter, an adult microscooter that he used to go from London to Brighton, but I've been using that as a mechanism to go down the track when I'm coaching and using both legs to drive off, so you get a different position. You don't have a resting leg when you're scooting. They're both working, they're just working in different ways. And that has been something really useful to me, and it means that I can actually move at quite a pace. Sometimes in training I can at least get to the finish line in time to time the athletes.
Well, again, it's getting you back into that routine. When you were a coach, you were out there with them.
Mm-hmm.
You were either running with them or you were at least able to do X, Y, and Z with them.
Yeah.
You'd start them on the 300 metre, and then you could at least walk, run over to the finish.
I can get back in time.
Otherwise, it's all gone. Yeah. But it gives an opportunity to go beside them, look at technique, and be your normal coaching self. It's not like you have to completely change what you do. You just have to change your mode of transport.
My big frustration is when people think it's an electric one.
Right.
It's not an electric scooter, for the record.
And you've got another scooter, the Me Mover.
So I've got a Me Mover, again, something Tony and I have set as a challenge for September next year, where we're going to ride these Me Movers, which are basically 3 wheels. It's a combination, I guess, between an elliptical trainer and a bicycle, where you stand on the pedals, and the movement is much more akin to running, where it's all about the leg drive upwards rather than the sort of cyclical movement on a bike. But this is the up and down movement, and you're very upright holding the handlebars in front of you. And so our challenge is to go from Romsey to Exeter in 3 days, and we're going to visit every rugby club on the way.
Really?
As we're hopefully doing this for Rugby Against Cancer, the charity. So yeah, that's going to be a challenge. I can cycle on that thing for, I've probably done 20k in an outing at the moment. through the New Forest, so on quite rough terrain. So I need to build that up if I'm going to get down to Exeter and back.
Yeah, and back.
Well, back in the car. But
I should hope so. One way.
Yeah.
Mm.
So I think we've covered a lot of ground there.
Yeah.
I mean, I would like to say thank you for all the help you've given me so far, and looking forward to more. It's going to come. But anything else you'd like to add in, just sort of generically, as to what you can offer?
No, I think we've covered enough. I think one of the main important points, set those small goals. Mindset's a big one, because in the app, the Winning Strength Blueprint app, we have a little questionnaire before you start every session. One of them's mood. I've never seen, or stress, I've never seen JT before the injury put below a 3, probably below a 4. It's either 4 or 5. There are some days where it's a struggle.
Yeah.
And I think without those other small goals, and without your support network, your partner, your athletes, and all these other bits, we talk about mental health a lot these days, but it is important if you're going to get back to full strength. You can't just be bloody minded about it. You're going to have shit days.
Yeah.
But you still turned up. I think that's a big thing. I think most people, when they have it might be the first thing they miss. If you're not an athlete, what we really need to ensure we touch on is you and I think differently. Okay, we think in absolutes. I want the strongest athletes, or the best athletes, or I just want whoever's in front of me to give me everything they have. Anything below that, I'm less interested in, because you don't have that same drive. So it's a case of not everyone is going to have the same drive as you, but you have to just put the work in. You have to just turn up, and you obviously, everyone knows the mental health benefits of at least getting the session in. And I guarantee every time you did the session, even if you were a 1, you left as a 2.
Definitely.
And if you don't put the work in, you're not moving. It's not a case of you're not moving forward. Every time you miss a session, you're moving backwards.
Yeah.
And it's going to take longer and longer and longer. And I think the consistency element is something you should be proud of, and the fact that you turned up every time, even though you were like, bus travel. When's the last time you got on a bus?
Yes.
All these new things, which some people can be like, okay, in their mind it's fun, but other people will be like, oh, I'm on a bus.
Yeah.
I'm going backwards. Well, no, you have to sometimes take that one step back to go 2 forwards.
Mm-hmm.
The slingshot goes back before it comes gets released. But the mental health aspect, I think, is a big thing. You're very strong mentally already. Another thing we should probably touch on, the fact that you do have that ability to dig yourself out of a hole where others might not be able to. So having that support network and just getting checked out. I don't know what the NHS offer with regards to support on that these days. They probably just focus on the physio and got you going.
That was the main thing. Yeah.
But then the other element is your body. Your body isn't as fragile as you might think it is.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I'm not telling you to take your brace off early. I'm not telling you to go, crank it up a few more degrees. But your body is capable of a lot of things,
yeah.
And being able to push it is important. And if you want to recover from injuries, the base of it is GPP, and the pyramid is it's a strength pyramid. You are weak. Once that surgeon has reattached everything, granted there's obviously elements of the attachments now need to bed and tissues need to heal, but once you've got through that phase, you are just weak.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think of it as I am just weak, how do you get stronger? You train.
No shortcuts.
No, it's just a case of it is a strength goal now. You're just starting at a very low level. That's all. I'm not saying that. I'm not disregarding physios, but that's all physiotherapy is. They're getting you back to a level, then you can then go and train. But I think it's important for people to understand that once you get out of surgery, once you get through that first part of the physio process, you're just weak. You can crack on. Your body isn't as fragile as you think.
Yeah, because I had obviously another X-ray to show that the bone had healed. Once the bone's healed,
crack on.
That's it. Yeah, that's really good.
Exactly. They took the brace off and told you not to come back.
Yes. Yeah, it was that.
But yeah.
Excellent. Well, thanks very much for your time, Tom.
Appreciate
Hopefully people have found this one useful.
Yeah, we'll do some more again.
We look forward to the next ones.
Cheers, man.